Okay, so I'm back with philosophy. We're about 2/3 of the way through After the Natural Law, and today we'll be talking about Descartes and his philosophy on how the mind was an entirely different substance than the body, that they don't interact with each other, and how that falls short, how Cartesian dualism ends up not working as a worldview. So as we talked about yesterday, on day 27 of this series, the classical worldview or Aristotelian philosophy has like a hylomorphic view of the person. So basically the soul and the body are innately intertwined. They work together, like my mind right now is physically functioning so that my hand is moving. There is a connection between my mind and the words. My mouth is functioning, right? And this is one of the issues that actually comes into play with Cartesian dualism, is that if the mind is entirely separate from the body, if it is an entirely different substance, right, how is it that it interacts? Like the interactionism is what it's called. And how is that, how could that be true if interactionism isn't, it couldn't be present if it was an entirely different substance? Our mind and our body are like, in my mind, right, it makes very perfect sense that they are innately intertwined. That's why I can like move my hand, like instincts, right? Like I think about like true instincts. Something's coming at me and my hand flings up without me even having to think. Like I don't have to have a tangible thought about it. My body naturally reacts because my mind has absorbed the fact that something is flying at me and I need to protect myself. Through this as well, there begins to be an intellectual objectification of the body, is what Professor Hill says about Descartes' philosophy here, in that when the soul is removed as an innate sense of our being, as an innate part or facet of our being, that our consciousness is actually removed to a degree, and the body is subject to the mind, which ends up giving that intellectual objectification of the body and diminished the soul, because the soul was understood to be an innate connection between the body and the mind, to be the soul, right? And I don't know, it gets like Cartesian dualism. Obviously, I am not an expert, but that's kind of what Professor Hill, what I understood him to be talking about here, in that our thoughts and feelings are objects and not the subject. Whereas like our experiences are incredibly relative to our existence, right? Whereas when the mind and the body are completely separate, our experiences no longer carry the same value of that of our body, because they're not innately combined. Like our body is the physical reality. So our body is the ultimate truth about what exists. There are two French words here. Let's see if I can find them. Cognitan. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Which is the thinking mind, which was non-material and non-spatial, and then the re extensa of the physical world, which included the body, which functions entirely like a machine, operating on mechanistic principles, while the thinking mind controls our voluntary action. So basically separating those two things out and saying they're not intrinsically, they have nothing to do with each other, actually, when, and this is where it falls short, right, is that obviously our body and our experiences are intertwined. And so yeah. But I think, wasn't Descartes the one who said, I think, therefore I am? Was he this one? Because I guess like even here now, it's actually the opposite of what I said about the body being the truth. Because he actually says that we can doubt our body because it's just a mechanism, whereas our mind is the ultimate truth, which makes more sense to the philosophy that I understood him to have, being the materialist. That our experience would matter more, that the mind and the body are completely separate. So he would actually say then that our mind is the ultimate because I think, therefore I am. And yeah, so yeah, this whole idea of them being separate for me, I think is just difficult to understand, because I think that the mind and the body both are very essential. I mean, I guess in my line of work, right, as a somato-emotional release therapist, as a massage therapist who works with people with the trauma that is physically manifested in their bodies, I guess there's a part of me that's like, no, the body and the mind are innately intertwined. Like, I've seen that in my work. There are non-conscious memories that come forward when I touch certain areas of somebody's body. Like, if I touch their arm, they can have a memory resurface of like their dad grabbing them when they were out shoveling snow one time, you know, and like different memories are actually like stored in our tissues. And so for me, the idea of the mind and the body being completely separate is like so foreign and hard to understand because of the experiences that I've seen people go through. Yeah, I don't know. I guess part of the reason for reading this book is to try to understand different aspects of philosophy other than my own. But I think like at the same time, you know, do we really have to understand those things that don't make sense? Like how hard, like some things are just never going to add up. Somebody could be staking the claim that 2 + 2 = 5. And how much time do I really need to spend on that, trying to understand them before I just say, no, 2 + 2 = 4. And here are the multiple different ways that I can approach explaining this to you. You know, let's get some M&Ms out. Let's get, you know, and let's count 2 and 2. Okay, now let's count to 4. You know, like how much time do I really need to spend on trying to understand somebody who, you know, their philosophy on 2 + 2 = 5? When I'm like, well, here, and here are 3 different instances of how I understand 2 + 2 = 4. Like, how much time do I need to spend there? Because for me, it's like, I'm like reading Descartes and I'm like, okay, I can kind of see where he's coming from, but then at the same time, it's like really hard for me to comprehend because I have all these different experiences. And like at the end of the day, the mind and the body, I would say, are intertwined. Like, and I appreciate Professor Hill's approach in trying to explain what it is that they believe and like where it falls short. And I think he just goes so quickly into where they fall short, and my mind goes so quickly into why it doesn't make sense to me as well, that it's like, okay, yep, I just don't agree with Descartes. So let's move on to what makes sense and why it makes sense. And then let's see what the objections are to that on why they don't make sense to other people. So that's where I am with that. So tomorrow then, day 29, is dissolving the substance of the person, Locke, Hume, and the empiricist tradition. So, which honestly, I don't even know what empiricism really stands for. So it looks like a fairly long section. So I'm hoping to be able to get through that. I'll probably read it tonight and then get the video done tomorrow. And then, yeah, it's an interesting deal. So yeah, this whole chapter is the problem with the disappearing self. And so I can see that, like, as in the line of work that I'm in, just that the mind and the body are absolutely intertwined, and there's no philosophy that could convince me otherwise based on what I've already seen. So, and then the fact that that does align with a classical worldview is actually really interesting to me, because the type of work that I do practice is, you know, probably considered more of like an Eastern medicine based approach, right? Like massage therapy comes from the East. It's not a Western approach. And so, so I just find that intriguing on how that can be integrated into the Christian worldview as it's still an Eastern-based practice. So those are my thoughts on today. Hope you found them interesting. Intrigued to hear your thoughts as well. And glad to be back today and talking about this, because it's it rejuvenates my mind. It really does. Like, I enjoy having these types of discussions. So I hope you do as well. I know some of you do, obviously. And yeah, so I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. We'll see you later. May St. Thomas Aquinas pray for us.